On this week's show, we'll continue our conversation with Georgia Southern Athletics Director Tom Kleinlein about some things coming up for the Georgia Southern Athletics. The Georgia Southern football team holds their summer camps. We'll talk with Tyson Summers about how things went. All that and more as we welcome you inside the Eagles. And welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And once again, Mike, we're here in the summertime. We're going to talk about football. You can always find something football related to get into. We'll hear from Georgia Southern Athletics Director Tom Kleinlein, speaking of football boosters and such, coming up in just a moment. But we're going to start things off with another camp at Georgia Southern. This one, they actually had two. It was a 7-on-7 camp, which is mainly passing. And then after that, they had an individual skills camp as well. Had a busy day, and they've got a busy week ahead as they continue their camps with a lot of these satellite camps we've heard about going on throughout the state and throughout the low country and all around.
And maybe that 7-on-7 passing camp, maybe the Georgia Southern passers were there. I know we've talked ad nauseum, it seems, about increasing the passing of the Eagles this year. So I guess never too early to get a head start on some guys who you might see wearing the blue and white someday. But overall, as we've mentioned throughout the camp season, just a great opportunity for rising juniors, seniors, guys who want to make their name in the college game to be able to not only showcase their abilities at a college field, but to do it in front of college coaches, and more importantly for those coaches to start to build those relationships that they'll need to grow throughout the next year, 2 years. Sometimes you've got coaches who have been talking to a kid for since middle school, since the beginning of high school anyways, and those relationships are what build the confidence in a school for each athlete, and hopefully something that Georgia Southern can get a head start on with this new coaching staff.
That's right. Well, they have lots of camps going on throughout the state this week as well. They're going to be at schools like Lovejoy, at Buford, traditionally some of the best football playing high schools around, so they'll be joining some schools at some of these. We did have a chance to talk with Georgia Southern head coach Tyson Summers about this camp at Georgia Southern and what they have ahead.
Still part of our Borough Belt camps that we've been doing this summer. It's a 7-on-7 tournament. We have a lot of local schools here, Statesboro High, and a lot of teams that are getting ready for kind of the Irk Russell Classic in the fall. Also got 2 teams from Florida that are here, 2 teams from South Carolina. Good opportunity for teams to be able to come, work on their passing skills, their defensive passing skills, and get an opportunity to compete. That's what we're looking for out of those guys today. We're certainly here evaluating and trying to do that part of it as well. It's a big part of recruiting for us is being able to have the opportunity to have as many young men and programs as we can on our campus and in our facilities and finding out about Georgia Southern. But again, the other piece becomes opportunities for them through recruiting to be able to see opportunities to play on our field, see what Paulson is like, see what our facilities are like. Those are positive things, as well as the opportunity, like I said, for a lot of them to have some preparation for the Irk Russell Classic.
You mentioned there's 12 teams here. Is this something you'd like to see grow?
Sure. The more opportunities to be able to help ourselves in recruiting, the more opportunities we have for young men and programs to be on our campus, the better that's going to be. And we'd certainly like to see it grow in the future. It's our first year doing this, and I think we've run a fantastic camp today with Coach Zachary and Coach Dean have done an awesome job for us, and really, really proud of the coaches and the players from the programs that are here for us. Done an excellent job as well.
Still a busy summer ahead. You've got a couple of camps up in the Atlanta area and actually, I guess, throughout the state.
We do have a busy week ahead coming. Obviously, we're going to be at different places in southeast Georgia this week coming up. Do have one in the middle part of our state in South Georgia as well coming up on Monday. Tuesday we'll be in the southwestern corner of our state, and then moving more to the Atlanta area for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Continuing to work, continuing to give opportunities for young people to be evaluated by our staff, and continue to do a good job with what we're trying to do, and be ourselves, be positive role models, and be good coaches and instructors while we're there as well.
Well, Mike, many of those schools right there that were playing on the 7-on-7 tournament will also be participating in the Irk Russell Classic. One of the many reasons why they put the new turf on the field instead of the grass, they can hold more games there. They're hopeful that there'll be concerts and things like that, which is one of the things we talked to Athletics Director Tom Kleinlein about in the upcoming portion we're about to show. But some of the other things that we were talking to him about was the booster numbers, how the caravans are going, and also a little bit about where ticket sales are right now, which he didn't seem right where he wanted them to be, but some of that can be expected with the fact that we only have 3 Saturday games, and it's a little bit maybe tougher to get those games all sold out when you've got Thursday night games thrown into the mix. Your thoughts? I know you had a chance to talk with Tom Kleinlein recently as well. What things do you feel like he's excited about, and what things do you think he's a little either needs improvement, I guess would be a good way?
Well, first off, with the ticket sales, you know it's going to be a little bit down. Even if the main booster and fan base of Georgia Southern was right in Statesboro, weeknight games are harder to make for non-students, you know, a little bit older fans with families, kids you have to take care of. So the tickets will take a little hit, but then again, winning begets winning. We've seen it a million times. If this Georgia Southern team starts to perform, starts to impress, maybe even starts to get some national exposure, it's amazing to see the free time that some people will come up with to be able to make it to the stadium, to buy a ticket. But there are other things that make money for the football team, for the university, other than just the number of butts in the seats. You look at the new ribbon board, the video board that went up a couple of years ago. All those draw in a lot more money than it had previously with the new multimedia contracts. A lot of facts and figures that are too deep to delve into right here, but suffice to say that it is making the university a lot more money than previous contracts. You might see those grow in the future, especially if companies, if big boosters, if they start to get on that train of wanting to advertise. There's no limit to how many signs you can put up, and I know that Georgia Southern won't hesitate to do what needs to be done to promote that brand. That's what Tom Kleinlein's been about since he got to Statesboro. I think you're going to see him continue to push, and then on the booster side, continue to push for more boosters up in the Atlanta area. So many of them up there, not all of them currently coming to games, currently giving money. When those start to roll in, I think that's when you start to see more devoted fans, people willing to make that extra mile, pay that extra $1 or $2 to get to Paulson Stadium, and that's where you see things start to grow. You see things like money roll in and just opportunities roll in for the team.
Well, of course, the money has to roll in a little more than it ever did because Georgia Southern made the jump up to FBS. You have to cover that money somehow for the travel and everything else that the extra scholarships now that are there for Georgia Southern. You had to make it some way. He knew, Tom Kleinlein did, coming in, there were going to have to be some things that would change, and like you mentioned, you have to sell more things or you have to make more money games, which I don't think the coaching staff really wants to be playing 3 money games a year, which could end up being 3 losses or at least 3 really tough games to have to deal with. So I believe they'd rather, if Tom Kleinlein and the people above can make money another way.
Well, it's really a double-edged sword when it comes to those money games. On one hand, you've got those close calls against Georgia Tech, NC State, Georgia last year in overtime. If Georgia Southern ever wins one of those, there's no telling the windfall that can come from that. More potential recruits start to turn their heads. Take a look at Georgia Southern. National media outlets outside of just the Southeast, they start to look and talk about Georgia Southern. But when you look at the dollar sign, the bottom line, there's a lot of teams in the general area willing to pay a lot of money for Georgia Southern to come. They see the crowd that they bring with them. They see the good game. It's not just another walkover game. You might have some in the future looking forward. This year, Georgia Tech. In coming years, Clemson. You might have some more of those fans who might not go out to see a normal FCS game. They might turn out to see Georgia Southern. That benefits Georgia Southern in that there's more money offered, more tickets offered. The only downside is most of those teams willing to do it are year in and year out very good teams, and as you mentioned, very tough wins.
Yeah, this year, the good thing, I guess, you mentioned about the Atlanta crowd, the Atlanta alumni base from Georgia Southern. This year, I guess they'll get to go to 2 games if they want to.
It'll be similar to 2014 where 5 home games, but for the ones in Atlanta that come down to all the home games, it's more like 7, and the 2 road games you don't have to travel nearly as far for.
That's right, Georgia Tech and Georgia State coming up on the schedule this year. Well, we did have a chance to talk with Tom Kleinlein about some of the things we just mentioned. Here's more from the Georgia Southern Athletics Director.
We've seen an 18% increase over this past year, and numbers of donors were up from 2,000 to roughly 2,600. We've seen an increase. When I first arrived here, we were raising about $945,000 a year. This year, we're closing in on the $1.5 million mark. That's cash money. It's not things that have been done in the past. which were things that were needed in terms of gift in kind and people helping out. We're always going to appreciate those gifts because they're important to us, but this is an actual dollar figure that we can put into our foundation reserves, and we can use it to pay scholarships with, because that is the goal of what we try to do through our annual fund.
How much of that may have been, though, the increase that was necessitated to people that had certain tickets? They had to increase their donation.
Well, I think certainly when you look at the success of a football program, when you have increased donations because of an increase in a donation associated with a ticket price, there's that. But I also think it's new people wanting to get involved as well. And I never take away from the importance of a successful athletic program in helping drive annual fund dollars, because that's the main goal of all of it. It may be football tickets, it may be a basketball experience, it may be a baseball game with a family, but all those things are intertwined in how to help drive the revenue that we need. So football tickets is just one avenue. We've had a number of donors that have gotten on board with significant gifts, whether it's through our Champion Society or through our Transition 20, that didn't have anything to do with tickets.
One final note before we go, Mike, I'm sure you'll be pulling as much as I will for former Georgia Southern Eagle Aaron Price, who was able to win his sectional, I believe it was, down at Timuquana in Florida, and is now going to be playing at 6:45 a.m. teeing off on Thursday at the U.S. Open in Oakmont. We wish him the best. Well, for Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.